Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debi Silber, and today's guest is Zoe Niklas. And Zoe was a survivor of childhood abuse and grew up with a parent suffering from substance abuse. Her story of survival and triumph is encouraging, insightful, and uplifting to all who hear her speak. Enthusiastic, delightful, and filled with hope, Zoe helps her audience transcend past hurts and drive out of the darkness and into the light. Her memoir, Driving into the Dark, a childhood memoir, is available on Amazon. So, you're about to meet someone who has truly taken trauma and turned it into a life of meaning and purpose. Zoe Niklas is about to share how even the darkest days can be healed through the power of love and more. Get ready. This is a powerful episode. Here's Zoe. Okay, everybody. So we have Zoe Niklas with us today. And you know the show is all about the betrayal of a family member, a partner, a friend, what happened, what we've done with it. And Zoe has an amazing story. And just in the brief time we spent chatting right before I hit the record button, she mentioned that she hadn't tied her experience to betrayal. So it's interesting. I'm curious myself to hear what her story is, how it does relate to betrayal, and what she's done to turn her biggest crisis into her greatest gift. So welcome, Zoe.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you with us. So, like I was just mentioning, you do have a profound story. I would love it if you could share your story with everybody.
Well, thank you. In 2005, I had a breakdown, and I couldn't remember day-to-day instructions or anything. And the surgeon I was working with at the time said that I would never get my functional day-to-day memory back unless I started writing down what happened to me as a child. So I wrote from that point on. I wrote for 2 years everything that had happened as a child, the abuse, the physical, psychological, and sexual abuse that I suffered. And then I sat on it, and when my adopted father was passing, I promised him that I would write the book and finish it about our fabulous story of how they and I saved me. And that's what I did. And now I'm talking about it. And I'll just give you an example of things that happened. My mother had been married 7 times, and some of the stepfathers I had were truly monsters. When I was very small, my mother attempted suicides many times, cutting her wrists, taking overdoses. And I decided that I realized that Mama was wrong. Mama was something was wrong with Mama, and it was my job to take care of her. So I became extremely vigilant. I needed to take control.
Yeah. So how old were you when you, as a child, made that decision or realized that?
Well, the first realization, I was 6. Wow. I had been left with so many people in my childhood. I got very good at, meeting people and getting along, but I had an aunt that loved to terrorize me with a vacuum cleaner, and she would chase me around the living room because it had this big red eye, scared me to death. And I'd had enough. I'd had enough of being with people that wasn't my mama. So I remember very clearly, I put all my babies, stuffed animals, in a brown paper bag, and I was going to find my mama. And I walked about 2 blocks dragging this bag of babies, and it ripped open. And I remember vividly standing there debating, well, should I go and try to find my mama, or do I leave my babies like Mama left me? Oh, wow. I couldn't do it. I could not do what Mama had done to me. I couldn't do it to my babies. So I just turned around and I went back. And I realized that I need to change my life. And when I spent a lot of time at the Admiral Theater in West Seattle, that's where I grew up, I watched the Doris Day movies, and I dreamt that I would have a mama as wonderful as Doris Day. And I kept that thought in my mind as I suffered through domestic violence, where my stepfather tried to strangle my mother. I was beaten once by a stepfather. And then the one that really got me was the night my mama let her ex-husband into my bedroom when I was 11 to touch me and fondle me. And she stood and watched.
Oh,
and I'd had it. I didn't want to be anything like my mama. I needed to save myself. She tried to make me feel that I was worthless. She would make it so that I couldn't do my homework at night and I couldn't sleep at night because she wanted me to be up and to listen to her. We didn't have food security. I was very skinny and very hungry. And I decided at that point I was going to find my mama, a good mama. And that's when I ran into a neighborhood child called Martha. And she took me to find her at her house. And there was the perfect Donna Reed, Doris Day mother, and she cooked.
And so I want to
just
and I just want to stop you here because I just want everyone to just get a real clear picture. So what you're saying is you understood that something was very wrong. You felt compelled to go back and grab your dolls from the bag because you wanted to be there for them, and you stayed in the house and suffered the abuse until age 11. But tell me, so during that time though, you knew something was off because of the way your mom was treating you, and you saw examples of other people in your neighborhood that didn't have that type of situation. What had you know something clearly is very wrong here?
When she tried to run away from my final stepfather from Seattle, she got as far as Chehalis, and that night she took an overdose of pills and collapsed on the floor. And I couldn't wake her up. I was 9 when this happened, and I shook her and everything, and she wasn't waking up. So I got on the phone and I told the motel person that I need help. My mom is sick. They came and they saved her life, but they put me in jail for that night. And then after I got picked up by my stepfather, he brought me home to West Seattle, and he said over the phone in my presence that he had a little girl that he didn't want anymore. And so I was put in the youth center in downtown Seattle. And that happened to me 3 separate times in my life. When I was 9, when I was 11, and when I was finally at 13, I fought in the courts, and I won my case against my mother.
So, okay. So I want to know about the case, but I'm also, I'm wondering, why didn't the authorities remove you from the situation earlier? Was it that you wanted to be there, or what? Because it sounds like a few times they were involved. Why were you there? Like what, I guess I'm just wondering what that was about.
I'm a little confused as to your question.
Yeah. When you said, so it sounds like there were a few times that the authorities had gotten involved, and
yes,
you still wanted to be home. Is that it? You wanted to live at home?
I was very conflicted. Mm-hmm. When I was 9, after the motel incident, they put me in the youth center, and my girlfriend, Martha, who had the wonderful parents, came for me and became my foster family. So I had this wonderful mother who helped me with my sleepwalking and my food problems and my nightmares. And I knew exactly what I wanted. It was that kind of mother. And after that, the court said, "Oh, well, your mother is fine, and we'll put you back with your mother." Mm-hmm. That happened twice. By the third time, and when I was 13, I knew that I had to leave because my sister, my true half sister Gail, who was 9 years older than I, she left because she had to when she was 17, and it left me alone with my mama. And it was a terrible time for me, but I watched her because she went to the authorities, got help, and they placed her in a foster home. So I knew, because my sister did it, I knew there was a way out.
So did your sister...
I used that when I was 13.
Right. Now, did your sister ever share with you the reason why she left or why she felt the need to leave?
No, because it was already kind of understood that mom's behavior was the leading factor to get out.
And were you in touch with your sister during that? Yeah. And were you in touch with your sister during those years?
Not much. She pretty much eschewed my mom and just had her own life and her husband and a child. She didn't have a happy marriage, and so we didn't really get to meet and talk to each other until I was finally placed with the Dimmick family at 13 as a ward of the court of the state of Washington. And at that point, at age 13, I felt that my life had started, and then I had a relationship with my half-sister, and I got healed from my anger with the family that loved me, and I got involved in theater, and that just helped me immensely. And now, since I wrote the book, I've got my functional memory back, and I'm back in theater, and I can remember lines. And that, I tell you, it's wonderful if you can remember stuff day to day.
and so I want to go back to, let's say, when you were 13, because, the show is about betrayal, and clearly, it's easy to see how there's a betrayal of what you expected your mom to be like, and you had this expectation, with the other mom who became a foster parent to you. So it's sort of like a loss of the expectation, a loss of what you felt you needed and deserved. And here was this other mom who sort of took you in. And when you say you healed, let's talk about that, because that's certainly a lot to heal from. What were the steps and stages that you went through to heal and to make meaning and to make peace with this?
Well, I always had a strong faith. It's a very basic, primal faith in a higher power. And the foster parents that I loved he was a retired pastor, and mom was of course, a social worker and a minister's daughter and a minister's wife. And so they were people that were invested in goodness. They knew that I had terrible nightmares, and when this is one thing is really cool about them, I had such vicious nightmares that mom and dad strung a string from the head of my bed up the wall to the ceiling, and through the ceiling, through the dining room, up the central staircase to a brass bell. And if I had a nightmare, all I had to do was tug on the string and the bell would ring, and mom would come down and she'd sit with me, and she would tell me stories of a little girl who got to sleep on a pink cloud that floated through the blue sky and landed in a green meadow where the birds sang and fairies slept in the flowers. And she did that over and over and over again, and my violent nightmares abated. And it was just like that. And when I was so nervous that I would rock and at the table, and I would shred my napkins, paper napkins. So at that point, mom gave me 5 paper napkins so that I would just work my way through that. And they never dissed me or said I was tarnished by my background. They loved me, and that love made me love myself. And then I took it from there. I knew what I wanted, and I wanted to be anything but like Zoe. I knew exactly what I didn't want.
Yeah. So it sounds like here love truly heals. I mean, it just does. And in this case, here's an example of such loving, wonderful parents who just saw how desperately you needed this love that you just didn't get from your mother or from the stepfathers. Did you try to contact your mother again or your stepfathers in any way?
I did get to see my mother when I was in college. My sister and I went to visit her once, and she hadn't changed. She still was pretty much a barbiturates junkie. But at that point, she still had my beloved dog that I got when I was 9. Zoe got this German Shepherd and named him Satan because she knew that would annoy my foster parents.
Zoe was your mother? That's your mother's name?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody is clear. Okay.
Yeah, she had the same name I have. She gave it to me because she hated it. She was named Mary Zoe, and so was I. So she went by Zoe. I go by Zoe.
Okay. Okay.
Gosh, where was I?
You were saying about the dog. It sounds like there were just. So how did you make sense out of being raised that way? I mean, how did you come to terms with my mother clearly isn't behaving, responding, reacting the way in my estimation a mother should? I mean, what did you do with that information? Like, how did you manage and work through that?
Well, I just basically bided my time and kept myself as safe as I could. And then finally, when I was 13 and I was walking home. I was going to school, and I heard a voice as clear as I'm sitting talking to you, and it was like a man speaking in a megaphone in my right ear, and the voice said, "Get help now." And so I walked to school. I walked into the counselor's office, and I sat down and I started telling her everything that had transpired.
Wow. And what did they say? What did the counselor say?
She said that she would follow up on that, and I was to go back to my classes. And I felt so relieved. I'd forgotten I'd even talked to her in the morning. And in the afternoon, a police woman came and took me to the youth center. And there I stayed for 2 months. As I fought my mother. She wouldn't sign relinquishment papers. She wanted me to languish in the youth center. She didn't want me. She didn't want to sign the relinquishment papers because she wanted me to be punished for going against her. Well, that's when I finally told my caseworker that Zoe had brought her my stepfather, her ex-husband, into my room to molest me repeatedly. And so, and that's a felony, and I didn't know it at the time. And my caseworker said, "Don't worry, I'll get her to sign that paper." And then that was the day that I got out.
Okay, so now
it was either her or me. Yeah.
So now it's 2005, and you started writing, and then all of this came out. So from the time you were 13 till 2005, was this just sort of on the back burner somewhere and not in your conscious? Was it repressed? I mean, were these memories things that you didn't recall, and it was in the writing that they started coming up for you? Because you said in 2005 you started writing.
Yeah, a lot of them did come up that I had just forgotten. A lot of them did come up. Memories. See, my mom kept a very good diary about everything. And when I was working on the book, I got another author to help me, and she read the diary, and then we incorporated my mom's diary into what was happening with me as I was living with them and getting better. And a lot of that I had forgotten. But what I really did was I just turned my back on everything of my past and started afresh at 13. However, I did have, and I still have, residual physical manifestations. I have of course, allergies. I have musculoskeletal issues. I have GI issues, and I am plagued with anxiety, and I have depression. But I'm doing things to take care of the depression. Meds, and I exercise, and I have a wonderful husband. I've been married 44 years, so I deal with it when I have a physical manifestation of anxiety, like diarrhea or stomach cramps or a muscle spasm. I usually can track it back to an emotional situation.
I was going to ask you, is it tied to a specific type of trigger for you?
Sometimes it's a trigger, and sometimes it's just kind of a general haze of anxiety, and I can't pinpoint it to anything. But I write in the morning a journal, and sometimes by the third page, something comes up. Oh, yeah, okay, now I understand why I reacted this way to that situation. And I'm a work in progress. I work on it every day, but I have the support and love of a wonderful family, my adopted family, my husband's family. That's why I say I'm the luckiest person in the world, because I knew what I wanted and I followed the way to get there. I made up 4 little steps for dealing with my problems, because it's like when my mom decided, Zoe decided to go to Wenatchee when I was 11, and she decided to do that in the middle of the night. So from West Seattle to Wenatchee is a very long drive, have to go over the mountains. Well, when we were in the mountains in the middle of the night, she pulled over and had a seizure because she was completely loaded. And she said, I had to drive the rest of the way. So I drove this 1952 Buick convertible.
You were 11?
I was 11. I was so small, I had to pull myself up to the edge of the seat so I could just touch the gas with the tip of my pink tennis shoe. And I drove all the way to Wenatchee. And by the time I got there, I was almost hysterical from fright, and I froze, and I bumped a bumper on a concrete block during all this construction. I'd never driven before, and I was in downtown Wenatchee traffic, so I bumped the fender, and Zoe got up, and she said, how can you be so stupid? Now what am I going to tell your father? You're stupid. After I'd driven for hours, and I was so scared when I was driving, the sweat was going down my back. I thought I was going to throw up. I could only see the road from beneath the steering wheel and above the dash. I had only 3 inches that I could see.
I mean, how did you even know how to drive? You're 11 years old.
Well, I watched her all the time because I wanted to make sure that she was on the road and going straight. And so I always watched her because I knew she wasn't reliable. I had to be responsible. Talk about being brainwashed. I was responsible for Mama. So it didn't even dawn on me till just wait until morning and she was, sober again. But I was in charge. I had to take care of Mama, so I drove. I was terrified. And the 4 steps I used from that incident, I grabbed the wheel. Be proactive, grab the wheel. I wasn't going to let a drunk driver get me killed. And then I followed the flashing white line, and I stayed on it. And I figured that is like me, listening to the inner rising, the voice that says, stay on this path. Don't go there. Don't go here. Stay on this path. And I felt like that's my faith. And never stop. Never stop trying to save yourself. Don't stop. Keep going. And so those are the steps that I believe in, and I cherish, I don't run over anybody. I cherish what I find in the people that I meet on an individual basis. And if they prove to me that they're worthy and truthful, I love them. And if not, I drop them. I can read people because I read Zoe. I mean, I had to read Zoe because if not, things could go wrong and I could get hurt.
Absolutely. So how did you go from that terrified girl who was abused to the woman you are now? How did you do? I mean, yes, it sounds like love absolutely made a difference in getting out of that environment was huge. But what were some other things that you did just to heal physically, mentally, emotionally?
Well, I did a lot of theater, and I did have counseling. I've spent a lot of time on a psychiatrist, which in fact, the psychiatrist that the court sent me to said that she's a nice girl and all, but she's going to be scarred for life. And that really annoyed me. I wasn't going to be a victim and scarred for life. So I just, as problems came up in my daily life, I would look at them and try to figure out what triggered that response. And that's how I did it. And I had the support and love of my family. I used theater as an outlet. I could rage and scream and feel so much better. And then I went to college and I was involved in theater, and that's where I met my beloved husband. And so whenever an emotional thing comes up, or I have an incident, a physical thing, I always look back. Okay, what triggered that? How can I help myself? That sort of thing. And I think it's my resilience from when I was a little kid. I had a vision. I had a vision of how I wanted to live my life. And that just helped me throughout my life. I always wanted to improve myself and use the talents that God has given me. And once I finished the book, I thought, well, geez, maybe I should share this with other people, because I'm sure there are kids out there that are just as hurt as I was, and I made it. And so I want them to know that it's okay. You can hurt and you can do all those things, but you can make it. And
resilience is certainly, resilience is certainly the word that comes to mind. So what do you want to make sure everyone knows as we wrap up?
You can make it. God doesn't make any trash. You're not less because if you had this terrible upbringing. I can change the course of my life. I can do it. And anybody in that horrible situation, get the help you need. You can make it too. You don't have to be locked into that. You can change your life.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. And you heard it here, everybody. If Zoe can take her biggest crisis and turn it into her greatest gift, well, so can you, because this was a lot to heal from, for sure. So Zoe, where do we go to learn more about you?
Well, I have my website, zoeniklas.com, and I managed to put my I wrote a play and I put it on YouTube. It took me months to figure out how to do that. I wrote a play, and it's a one-woman show, and it's what I did, it's like an acting of my book. And I put it together, and you can watch that. And I have an interview with Jack Canfield on that YouTube place. And so that's how you can learn about me. And I am so grateful for the time to have with you, Dr. Debi, and your folks. I just want them to know that I care. I care. I know what it's like.
Yeah, okay? And I appreciate you so much and what you've managed to overcome. I mean, when something so traumatic happens, that's one thing. But when we can learn something from it, do something with it, and then help and support people because of it. Oh, in my estimation, that is an absolute home run. That's why we're on the planet. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. So I'm so grateful for you, for your time, and for the gift that you're sharing with the people who need it. So thank you so much, Zoe.
And thank you, and blessings, and I wish you great joy. Thank you.
Wow, Zoe had so much to heal from, and I love how she found the outlet of theater as a way to get out all of that rage and anger that was sitting inside. Everyone has their own strategies to help them heal, and it's important to find out what will work for you. Stay in touch with Zoe by going to zoeniklas.com, and we'll have all of her information in the show notes at pbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. As Zoe said, God doesn't make any trash. It's so hard when you're on the receiving end of abuse to know your worthiness, but it's a great mantra to say to yourself when you question your own worth. And to show you how wonderful you are, I have a gift for you. Head over to pbtinstitute.com and receive my gift of How Your Biggest Crisis Reveals Your Greatest Gift. And let us support you. Go to Facebook and join our group, Women Hacking Betrayal, where we give information, tools, and support to help you move forward and heal once and for all. Can't wait to be with you next time. And here's to your breakthrough.